Institute estimates that 827,000 of the 11 million here illegally are convicted criminals. That's a total of 7%. Not 1% should be in the country. Mark Morgan is a former head of the Border Patrol, and he's heard the rhetoric, but he knows the reality. Mark, is the president making up an emergency?
Absolutely not. And Brian, this is the part of the frustration for those of us from a law enforcement, border security perspective. How many more statistics do we have to provide? How many more factually based examples do we have to provide? How many more angel families have to stand in front of some of these individuals before they finally say, yeah, okay, this is real? It's just incredulous.
It's true. And the other thing I thought about too, Mark, and because I know you served during the Obama years, there was an emergency then. They chose not to act on it. It doesn't mean there's not one now, and it doesn't mean they're not getting worse. I mean, the numbers this year show a huge uptick in apprehensions. That doesn't count the people we don't catch. So when people say to you, the drugs are coming through the port of entry, let's use some technology to crack down there, there's no problem with drugs in the middle of the country and other areas not populated. What do you say?
Well, that's right. And a couple of things you hit on, Brian, and you're spot on. So first of all, look at the take right now. 60,000 are coming in a month illegally into this country. So this year so far, 62 caravans of 100 or more, 13 of all of last year, 2,000 in one single day this week. So the numbers are climbing, but it's manufactured, right? And the other thing, the other argument on in between the ports of entry, it's a absolute false narrative. 60% of the southwest border does not have enough infrastructure, technology, and personnel. I call that wide open. So they're disingenuous when they talk about the ports, because we don't, Brian, just what you said, we don't know what's getting through, but we do know that it is getting through, and there's a lot that we're not interdicting in between the ports.
So, you know, it's just amazing, too, because not only did most Democrats not agree, there's a new trend. And mark my words, it's going to be happening all week. Instead of build the wall, take down the fence. That's going to be the method. As a person who's out there trying to defend our border, what does that mean to you?
Again, what it means to me is that this is absolutely driven on identity politics. The experts have spoken both on ICE, both on the United States Border Patrol and CBP, and they've told Congress what they need to protect our borders, for the security and safety of this country, Brian. And they have not just ignored it. They have just absolutely discounted everything that they've said. And unfortunately, to me, I've only drawn one conclusion. It's based on identity politics.
And I just asked for the latest, that's why I was looking down, the latest news about January. And so far in January, apprehensions have risen up. There were 58,207 apprehensions in January. That's the highest it's been over the past 5 years. And those are the people, as you always tell us, that you get. What about the ones we don't know about? And I just talked to somebody else who just went down to the border because they're serving in the military. And they say some of the techniques that these people crossing are using mirror the military techniques that they've seen in battle. That's what's happening in Arizona. So share more of those stories. Mark, thanks for your up-close and personal, unbiased look at what's happening at the border. We'll see where we go from here.
Joining me now, Mark Morgan, former U.S. Border Patrol chief under President Obama. Mark has a lengthy, distinguished career in law enforcement at almost every level of government. Before the Border Patrol, 20 years in the FBI, time as special agent in charge of the FBI's El Paso division, one of its busiest divisions and sectors, as well as in local law enforcement. Mark, good to have you with us, and thank you so much. This is, it is extraordinary that the Democrats will not recognize. They've become deniers. The facts are the facts. It isn't a matter of dispute. The number of criminal illegal immigrants being arrested, the number likely extrapolating from previous experience who are getting across that border, the deadly drugs that are being trafficked into this country from Mexico, and by the way, the majority of which, majority of fentanyl, marijuana, cocaine, heroin, it's all coming from Mexico. And they refuse to acknowledge that. And you say the president's wall is exactly the prescription necessary to stop it.
Lou, that's absolutely right. And everything you just said is exactly why I have broken my silence after all this time. Two major points that I want to make sure the American people hear based on my experience, not some political ideology, The president is absolutely correct when he says this is a national security and humanitarian crisis. It absolutely is, and it has been. Number two, let's go back to what you just mentioned earlier. What is incredulous to me is in 2006, the Secure Fence Act was passed, a bipartisan group of politicians that were saying the same thing years ago that the president is saying now, why we need the wall. And the wall, what's ironic about that, 720 miles of wall was built as part of a multi-layered approach of infrastructure, technology, and personnel. And it works. And we have the facts that show it works. Go to El Paso, go to San Diego, go to Nogales. It's fact.
It is fact. And the truth is this, that this country is suffering through a crisis that will be unending. It will go on in perpetuity because this president is not receiving the support. And it's not a question of partisanship, as the president has said. This is the duty of every person, Democrat and Republican. There is another duty at play here, which is being ignored. This country has, as a neighbor, Mexico, which has so many wonderful qualities as a nation, and certainly the peoples of Mexico are wonderful people for the most part. But they're under the control of cartels across the vast sweep of northern Mexico, its government itself. And this president is the only president in history to ever say he is taking them on. And that's what he's doing when he tries to stop the drug trade, the sex trade, and illegal immigrants crossing that border, correct?
That's absolutely right. And as you mentioned, I spent 2 decades in the FBI, one leading the El Paso division for the FBI. And I can tell you, Lou, the cartels, they were warring then and they're still warring now. And think about that. I want the American people to take a second. Why are they warring? Because they're fighting over the human trafficking routes, the drug routes, the illegal immigration routes. Why? Because it's so profitable. If we build this wall as part of that multi-layered approach, we take that avenue away from them. It's just common sense. The president is right. We take a significant avenue away from them, and now we are in a better position to stop this and dramatically reduce bad things and bad people coming into this country.
In that vein, let me ask you for your judgment on this. The government of Mexico now, with the new president, López Obrador, he represents change. The question is what direction that will take. But those cartels have corrupted the government itself of Mexico at the federal level, the provincial level. How much of the border, both sides of the border, are corrupted as a result of those cartels, their trafficking, and the efforts, let's be very clear, the efforts of the establishment, right and left, to keep that border wide open for illegal immigration and keep business as usual, whether it's remittances, $50 billion worth flowing across that border southward, or drugs moving north.
Lou, make no doubt, the cartels are alive and well. The corruption is alive and well. And that's why if you look at the experts who work this every single day, who have dedicated their lives, 127 Border Patrol agents have given their lives defending the border. If you look at this, it's absolutely an issue. And that's why when we talk about what we need to do, it's not just about the wall, which we need, but it's also continue to work with Mexico to get them to get skin in the game and fix issues on their side. We need to do it all, including the wall.
Mark Morgan, good to talk with you. We thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You bet.
Take care.
What are the actual arguments for and against a wall? Well, we found someone who has had the difficult job of overseeing protection on the border. His name is Mark Morgan. He led the Border Patrol under President Obama. He does not stay for President Trump. He joins us tonight for his view on that. Mr. Morgan, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you, Tucker, for having me.
So the idea that walls don't work, that seems like the most real of the arguments we just heard. Do they work?
Yes, they absolutely work. If you look in the past, you don't have to go too far back in history, that a bipartisan legislation that was passed, the Secure Fence Act.
Yes.
In 2006 and 2012, bipartisan legislation passed where they built the wall, or fence, or physical barrier, whatever you want to call it. It's a wall. It works.
So I just want to be completely clear. I have no idea what your politics are. You worked for Obama. You did not work for Trump. So I don't know what that says, but just to be totally clear, we're having you on to talk about this in your capacity as someone who knows a lot about the subject. Is there a real argument against having a wall that you're aware of?
No, I don't. And if you look at the experts, you know, the other day, so both the president of the Border Patrol Council, Brandon Judd, as well as the president, they were actually, I was removed as the chief. And I'm here today to tell you.
You were removed as the chief by whom?
By the current administration. So,
okay. So you were taken out of your job by Donald Trump, but
correct.
You're here to tell us that a wall makes sense anyway.
Correct.
Okay, just to be clear.
That's right. The president is right. The president of Border Patrol Council is right. The other day when they had the national press conference and they got up and they said the wall works, they're right. And it's not based on a personal, political ideology. That's based on historical data and facts that can be proven.
Huh. So why do you think people oppose it?
You know, that I think is a political point that they're trying to make. I personally, in my experience, and I was also, the FBI for 20 years. I was special in charge of the El Paso division right on the border.
Yes.
Tucker, I cannot think of a legitimate argument why anyone would not support the wall as part of a multi-layered border security issue.
Right. So is it frustrating to you as someone who's actually done this for a living and as far as I can tell is not political and obviously has no partisan reason for doing this, is it frustrating how little time we've spent actually debating the question of a wall and instead we're debating Trump this, Trump that, but where's the conversation about the actual border and ways to protect it?
Tucker, again, I think you're right on. We're too wrapped up in the style, the approach, the fact that it's coming from the current president rather than the substantive issues. If you look at the substantive issues, the strategy has never changed. From the gatekeeper strategy from years ago, it's about infrastructure, technology, and personnel. That strategy worked then, and it works now. It was approved with the Secure Fence Act in 2006 and 12. And it works now. I don't understand what's changed.
What do you make of the argument that anyone who thinks the border needs to be secured and there's a crisis, CNN literally put scare quotes around the word crisis today in a Chiron, is a bigot? What do you think of that?
Well, then you can call me that, because I believe in what the president is doing. When he says that this is a national security problem, he's absolutely correct. And that doesn't come just from me. That comes from the professionals that have been doing this their entire adult lives, serving the country on the border, protecting the citizens. They're saying it works. Why aren't we listening to the experts and the people who do it every day? I don't understand that, Tucker.
I don't know why we haven't had you on earlier. That's the most compelling case I've seen for this wall. Mr. Morgan, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's great to see you.